This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back to Death by Southwest, the podcast where each week I share a different grisly murder story unique to the American Southwest while my sister and co-host tries to piece together the clues and unravel the mystery behind each of these heinous crimes. I'm your host, Margot.
And I'm Jenna.
And if you just heard whining in the background, that is Indiana. She's in a super whiny mood, so hopefully she'll calm down. But I'm going to tell you about our story today for episode 34. So when Loretta Bowersock, a successful businesswoman from Arizona, goes missing during a holiday shopping excursion in 2004, detectives believe she's been kidnapped, and they launch a massive search to find the person responsible. But as the investigation hits dead end after dead end, it seems the only hope of locating Loretta lies in the puzzling visions of a psychic detective.
They thought she was kidnapped because she was a successful, maybe businesswoman, like some sort of money extortion situation.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yep. We're going to totally talk about that. Yeah.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
And so this story takes place partially in Tempe and partially in Tucson. We've done a bunch of stories in both. And so this is something that I think we've both mentioned we're going to run into when we have repeated stories in Southwest cities that we've covered. I think a little overview maybe for new listeners who didn't perhaps hear the past episode. So we did a Tempe episode. I want to say Adrian Salinas. I think it was like episode 3.
Well, also part of the last episode was Tempe. Just
right.
A bit of it.
And part of it was Tucson with the pastiche and stuff. So, but I thought I'd give just a very broad overview of Tempe. And then I have some weird facts about Tempe. And we're going to jump right into this sense of place because I have decided to listen to our listeners. We've had a lot of comments that the intro and banter and chit chat at the beginning is getting excessive. And it is, because I love bantering and chit chatting with Jenna. So I've let that kind of go on too long. We're going to move all of that, all of our reviews, listener questions, comments, everything to the bonus episodes. And we're going to really try to stick more to just sense of place and the story. So with that being said, let's jump into some sense of place for Tempe and Tucson. So Tempe is a kind of a suburb, I guess, of Phoenix. It's a slightly smaller area of Phoenix where Arizona State University is located, which is one of the largest public universities in the United States. So that has a big influence on Tempe. If you had to guess, this is a hard one, but if you had to guess, what do you think the population of Tempe might be?
That's so hard because I think of Phoenix itself. I don't know. Tempe, 1 million? That's probably too much.
It's too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Way less.
Oh, 187,000.
Wow. Really close. About 200,000. Oh. So that was pretty good. And Phoenix has.
Because now Phoenix, when we look up Phoenix population, it doesn't encompass all these quote unquote suburbs. It's hard to know.
It's hard to know that the general population of Phoenix, Arizona is 1.6 million.
That's Phoenix city limits, which
probably doesn't include
Tempe, Chandler, all the things. Yeah.
Right. Yes, you're right. Yeah, because if you look at a map, Phoenix is kind of this tall I, like capital I shape. And to the west is Glendale, to the east is Scottsdale, and then below Scottsdale to the east is Tempe and Mesa and Gilbert and Chandler. And for anybody who's not familiar with Arizona, if Arizona is like a square, Phoenix is pretty much right smack dab in the middle. Tucson is 2 hours almost directly south.
A little bit east, but southeast, right?
Right, from Phoenix. Very, 60 miles from the Mexico-U.S. border. And then Flagstaff is about 2 hours almost directly north from Phoenix. So that hopefully gives a picture to people who maybe aren't familiar with Arizona's layout. I feel like we have done quite a few stories. I like doing stories here. It was cool to do the story about, not cool, sad and interesting to do the Parker League story, but then be able to go drive by Pastiche. I thought that was cool. Beyond that, the climate, it's the desert, same as Tucson. It's very, very, very fucking hot.
It's actually hotter.
It is. Yeah. Tucson is usually 10 degrees cooler?
Yeah. The highs here have been 110-ish. Mm-hmm. And I looked the other day and I think the high was 118 in Phoenix. And
yeah. Oh my God.
I heard that a lot of planes are being delayed coming into Phoenix because it's so hot. I don't know if they're having to do something to the runways before planes can land, but that's causing delays, which is kind of creepy.
I wonder if, how when you're driving on a road, you see it
looks like a mirage.
A mirage. I was going to say oasis. Yeah, mirage. I wonder if that affects planes and pilots when they're landing, because it is so hot that I feel like would happen. Yeah, it's been exceptionally hot in all of the Southwest, but certainly here in Tucson and Phoenix. I can't imagine it being 10 degrees hotter than it is here, because here last night I was sitting outside. It was so windy. It was lovely with the wind, but it just felt like I was sitting in a giant blow dryer. Like it's just hot air being blown across my face. So hot in the summer. I actually saw a news article the other day that said it's not global warming, it's global. Some scientists said it's global melting or something. Like we've moved past global warming into global death of heat.
It's a weird time.
Yeah, everything is heating up. That's right. It is a weird time. So yeah, that's kind of our overview. I have a couple of weird, interesting facts about Tempe. I don't know much about Tempe. I do not like Phoenix, Tempe. I don't like any of that area really at all. I'm not a big fan. Two of my best friends live there.
I like not living there. I like to go for a night or a weekend if I have a pool nearby. They have fun nightlife.
They do have a good nightlife. Yeah, that's true.
But
it's just
there's not a lot of, for me at least, and I've never lived there. It's not a lot of culture.
Yeah.
And it's all big freeways.
Yep.
Highways, whatever.
It's very big. It's a big city. It's spread out. Tucson is also a big city, but there are pockets. It feels smaller, and it is just completely surrounded by mountains. So everywhere you look, it's beautiful. Whereas Phoenix, of course, you see mountains, and there are areas that I think are very pretty, but mostly you're looking at highways and strip malls and empty desert landscape, which is just depressing to me.
I would make an amendment to what you said if I was going to, which I am.
Okay.
Not everywhere you look in Tucson is pretty. Now, everywhere you look on the horizon, above eye level,
yes.
There's mountains. We're in a basin.
Yes.
Basin? Yeah.
A basin, yes.
But sure, of course, driving to the airport.
Oh, the other day I put a video on our Patreon when I was driving on Miracle Mile. And I was like, I think I actually said in the video, this is, I think, one of the least attractive streets in Tucson.
Oh, well, we'll go to some other streets.
Okay. All right. So some interesting facts about Tempe. It is often described as an urban desert oasis. What do you think that means to you?
Well, it's city-ish, urban, desert. It's in the desert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And an oasis, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Tempe, urban desert oasis. Meh.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it that. The article where I found this says that it's a blend of urban development and desert landscape, which is a unique oasis-like environment because there's palm trees lining the streets.
That's true.
There's Tempe Town Lake, and that provides like a contrast to the like harsh desert.
That's true. Like in Tempe, I think there's more, even if you're not on the university property, like there's just, there seems to be more palm trees, more grass, which I don't necessarily agree with grass in Phoenix surrounding areas or anything. But Is that considered a weird fact? It's just a weird description, I'd say.
Yeah, a weird description. Yeah. I guess it's not. I guess some of these aren't weird facts. They're maybe just interesting and ones that we haven't covered before because we have covered this.
Let's hear the next one.
The annual Pumpkin Chunkin' happens in Tempe.
Chunkin'?
Yeah, it's a quirky and fun event known as the Pumpkin Chunkin', where participants use various contraptions to launch pumpkins through the air for distance and accuracy.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like
to kind of like explode, and then they explode.
Yeah. It's a playful and eccentric festival that draws many visitors.
What, people use big like boomerang type contraptions?
Sure. Yeah. I would like to look more into that because I love October is my favorite month. Halloween's my favorite holiday. I love it, and that is something that I might go to Tempe for. To see. I would actually do that. So I had never heard of this or seen this, the Grady Gamage Memorial Auditorium. It's named after an influential ASU president, Grady Gamage, and it resembles a flying saucer or a squashed wedding cake.
Do you have a photo there?
I do. That looks like neither of those things.
I mean, what did they say? A
flying saucer or a squashed wedding cake? A squashed wedding cake, I guess I could see.
Maybe. It looks, what's it, an orchestra hall?
Yeah. Auditorium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean.
Pretty.
I think that's actually kind of nice looking.
But look, you can kind of get the feel for why they say oasis, like all the.
Yeah. There's a lot of green.
I mean, on campus, for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of campus, the next one is the ASU Naked Run.
Oh, what, once a year? No, once a year.
Yeah, it's a tradition. Before finals week, students participate in the Naked Run where they streak through the campus at night naked. Although it's important to note that the university admin discourages this.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I imagine, not that they do, because now it's like, I'm sure they don't. It's a tradition. People could get arrested for streaking
is illegal, I think. Being naked, except for, remember, there's a city in Texas where you can walk without a shirt or a bra.
There's a couple. I think there's a handful of places in the United States where
clothing is
humans
optional.
Can have their breasts out. I don't know about bottoms.
So weird.
Yeah,
I would not participate in that.
Well, I guess I mean, I'm not like a joiner in general, so.
So true. Me either.
Nor
am I a joiner. Explain that though.
Like, I'm not a joiner. Like, I didn't join a sorority. I'm not.
Right. You're not going to join like group activity things.
I'm not.
No, nor am I.
Which is not a bad thing. I probably could be a bit more of a joiner and that'd be healthier for me, but I'm not.
Yeah. I'm
definitely not joining a naked run.
No, nor am I. There is, in 2002, Tempe hosted something called the Cow Parade event, which featured decorated cow sculptures displayed throughout the city, an artistic and whimsical touch that many people enjoyed, which that was in Chicago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it the same thing?
Because 2002, but it was in Chicago. I feel like I was there when it...
In the late 90s, it still may be there. I don't know.
I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure either.
Yeah, all the different decored cows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Those are my interesting Tempe facts. And then just a couple of facts. Our part of the story takes place here in Tucson at Park Place Mall, which is a mall over on the east side. So just a little history. I'm not going to tell you how it's involved, but I will tell you that it opened its doors in 1975 and has been a significant retail hub in Tucson for a while. It was one of the first enclosed shopping malls in the area that offered a climate-controlled environment, which makes sense because a lot of stuff's outdoors. Didn't you have in your high school, did you have outdoor hallways and stuff?
I was just going to say, a lot of high schools, a lot of places like La Encantada is, like my high school was open air hallways. Like there was a cover, and this, but
and no walls.
No walls. Of course, then you would get into hallways with all the classrooms
in the interior. It's so
but
different.
a lot of I think I know high schools and like La Encantada.
Everything's outdoors because most of the year it's not 110 degrees. It's hard to remember that right now, though.
Well, I also know that Park Place Mall is one of the places that people would go maybe in the summer, but I most remember in the winter, like
to exercise.
Yeah, to like do fast walking.
Yep. You know what's really funny? Jason used to do that. He used to call me when he was like walking around. I was like, "Why is it so noisy?" Jason is a producer I used to work with, and he would call me just to talk, and he would say, I'm walking around the mall, just for exercise.
Was it too cold, or he just did it because it was his place? Once he got there, he knew I'm walking.
Yeah,
it's exercise.
I think Brian was. I think it was like Brian would be doing something and he would go to the mall to walk. I think I'm not sure, but so funny. Lots of people do that. So Park Place Mall features over 1 million square feet of retail space. Has more than 100 stores. I'm guessing way more than that at this point. This might be a little bit old. Has, traditional stores. I guess they're called anchor stores. Dillard's, JCPenney, and Dick's Sporting Goods.
Wow, I haven't been there, obviously, in a long time, since high school. Or maybe once for a movie, but I never knew Dick's. I knew there was a movie theater. Is there still? I think there is.
I think there is.
And so anchor stores are like the
AMC.
bigger ones.
Yeah, the bigger stores are like considered the anchor stores. Yes, there is a AMC movie theater, food court, obviously. They offer various community events and seasonal activities, charity drives. It's a mall. That's pretty much, that's it. That's the most. There wasn't like, I was hoping to find like some, like it's haunted or there's something like cool and weird about it, but there's really not. It's a mall from 1975 that actually, it doesn't look like that though. It's a very updated, they've
kept updating it.
Super nice.
I have a lot of
memories,
fond, weird memories.
Really? About Park Place Mall?
Oh, I mean, I went to high school here and we hung out there sometimes.
Oh, I think those are offline stories probably.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's jump in to our story for today, episode 34. And our story today focuses on Loretta Jean McJilton Bowersock.
That's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful for sure.
Say it one more time.
Loretta Jean McJilton Bowersock. She was born in Harvey County, Kansas on March 2nd, 1935. To parents Luther D. McJilton and Gladys Myrtle Hatch McJilton. And I feel like the parents' names aren't important, but our grandmother's name was Gladys, and I rarely hear that name. So that was interesting.
Say the Gladys name again, though.
Gladys Myrtle Hatch McJilton. I mean, what an interesting name.
And where was
she was born in Kansas.
Okay.
And don't know how she made her way to Arizona, but she did. And she had a daughter, Terry, and a son, Scott. There's so little out there about Scott that for a while, when I was researching this, I thought he maybe was Terry's husband. So it was her son-in-law, but I believe it's her actual son. I couldn't find anything about her first and only husband. But aside from that, they got divorced when the kids were teenagers. She was described by her daughter later in life as being a very classy woman, beautiful, always put together, always like had an outfit, makeup, hair. Kind of reminds me of, when I was reading this, she kind of reminded me of Momo, of our grandma, and very, very smart.
This was also kind of a sign of the times in some way of... So she was born in 35? Yep. So in 65, 75, I don't know about 70, but I just picture people more dressing.
Yeah, absolutely.
She made her way to TUCSON?
To Tempe.
Tempe, okay.
Yeah, to Tempe. And again, I couldn't find how or why, but she did. She eventually got married. She had Terry, the daughter, Scott, the son. And then when the kids were teenagers, she divorced her husband And right around that time, either right before the divorce or right after, she bought a 1-story brick house that had pillars in the front, a double garage, and a red front door in Tempe. And it was, at the time in the late 70s, pretty inexpensive. But over the years, it just went up. And she just watched the value of that home go up, 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 up. And she loved it. She fell in love with this house for whatever reason. And she planned on the house being, it was an important house to her. It was something I think she did after the divorce. I think she did on her own. Either way, once she was divorced, she maintained it on her own, and she saw it kind of as a nest egg for when she was ready to retire. She loved this house. And she kind of seemed to thrive after the divorce. Single life agreed with her. She worked as a tennis instructor and eventually started a business with her daughter, Terry. So they got a $2,000 loan from Terry's grandmother. I don't know if that was Loretta's mom or her ex-husband's mom, either way. And they started something called Terry's Consign and Design Furnishings, which offered gently used furniture to customers. And when they started this, they had no idea how much it would grow. So Terry had said, I had a calling at a very young age to recycle. I wanted to save trees, and every time you sell a gently used dining table, you save a tree. So I was really excited to do this with my mom. And they started this small business that very quickly turned into a multi-million-dollar chain with stores throughout all of Phoenix and Tempe, and even one in Tucson.
You know I have questions, but I'll save them for later.
You can ask your questions if you want. I may not have answers.
Yeah, I just wonder my original, before you said there's one in Tucson now, where was the original one in Tempe?
I believe it was Ray Road.
Okay.
Right around there. They started this in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. They started this business together. And like I said, I don't know I don't think the one in Tucson still exists, but there are definitely still some in Tempe and Phoenix and Chandler, although I believe they may have been bought out at this point. That would be something to look up for the lookup list, actually. They became very popular, multi-million-dollar chains, and they wrote, Loretta and Terry even wrote their own TV commercials that Loretta starred in.
Thanks to you and Mom, Terry's Consignment Furniture has expanded again from one warehouse in 1979 to 6 adjoining warehouse showrooms filled with furniture from homes like yours.
There's a beautiful Bernhardt sofa, and you save $1,400.
Or this cherry bed, only $149. Save at the nation's largest Terry's Consignment Furniture, just west of the Price Club in Mesa, or call 969-5545. Thanks, Mom.
The camera really agreed with Loretta, and she quickly became kind of a local celebrity in Phoenix and Tempe. The two of them really became kind of a local rags to riches story. I don't think they were ever rags. I don't think they were ever super poor, but they became very, very wealthy and very prominent in Arizona and Tempe based on these stories. Terry won several very coveted business awards, and she was even on Oprah. And when she was on Oprah pointed out that she was so impressed that dyslexia hadn't stopped Terry from becoming a millionaire, because apparently Terry had dyslexia. And Terry said, yes. And Oprah, I guess, responded and said, even though you couldn't fill out a job application properly, you still became a multi-millionaire with your own business.
This is going to sound crappy, but she didn't have to because her mom established the business.
They did together.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a $2,000 loan, and they did it completely together. Terry graciously responded to Oprah and said that she had only made it with the help of her mom and a loan from her grandma. So for the next few years, the first store opened in the late 70s, early 80s. For the next few years, Loretta and Terry worked side by side in their store and then stores every single day. And after about 8 years, Loretta was exhausted. She was tired of being on her feet all day. She was becoming exhausted of running a small business that was kind of a large business.
She was
now.
in her 60s at
yeah.
that point. Yeah, because she was born in 35.
Yeah. So she was exhausted. So Terry bought Loretta out of her half of the business, and supposedly Loretta went to work in real estate. I couldn't find much information on that. I kind of gather that she didn't really need to work at this point, I think. And she was very happy. She seemed to have everything. She had plenty of money. She was healthy. She had a great, loving family. And she even was, enjoyed a little bit of local fame and notoriety. But there was one thing missing from Loretta's seemingly perfect life.
A spouse?
Love.
Don't miss what happens next in today's episode. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors.
Yeah, Loretta was feeling lonely. So it was the summer of 1987 when Loretta was feeling particularly sad about her kind of lacking love life. And she sat down with her daughter, Terry, and was talking to her about how it was really hard to meet men at this age. And she was sad to not have someone to share kind of this special later in life. She was very wealthy. She could do anything. She could travel, and she didn't have anyone to enjoy it with. And Terry turned to her mom and apparently said, quote, "You remember Three's Company? They ran an ad to get a roommate, and they were really looking for a boyfriend." And Terry said, "I thought that might be a good idea. So we ran an ad." So in the summer of 1987, Loretta, and with Terry's help, put an ad out in the local paper, I guess, looking for a roommate to lease out a room in her Tempe home. And it was quickly answered. That ad was quickly answered by a man named Taw Benderly. Weirdest name. I've never heard that name before. Taw.
T-A-W?
Yep, T-A-W. And Taw seemed to be like, it was like he came out of a magazine. It was like a romance novel. He was exactly what Loretta was looking for. He was handsome. He rode up for the first time to her house on a motorcycle. He had charm and charisma, and he just won over Loretta and Terry right away.
So was the ad in the Arizona Republic?
I think it was in like local newspapers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he told Loretta that he had recently moved from Scotland, where he had been a big CEO. And he had moved here because he was going to pursue a few successful inventions. He was an inventor and an entrepreneur. Loretta was instantly captivated by this guy. And despite the fact that he seemed to have no money, he told Loretta that his wallet, he had been robbed at the airport when he came in from Scotland. He had no money, but she was so captivated by him that she agreed to rent him the room. She said, "You can have it." He moved right in.
I wonder if he ever paid rent.
I'm not going to answer that. He wasted no time making himself right at home and, kind of seemingly try to earn his keep, which makes me think he didn't pay rent. I couldn't find that specifically, but that's my guess. He cooked, he cleaned, he did repairs around the house, and he kept Loretta entertained with captivating stories about his time as a student at Wharton Business School with Donald Trump, supposedly.
In New York.
Supposedly.
New York City.
Mm-hmm. And his big dreams for being a very successful inventor. Almost immediately, the relationship between Taw and Loretta went from roommate to romance.
Good for... Wow. Never mind.
The two started dating, and Loretta quickly fell head over heels in love with Taw. She loved hearing about his latest inventions, like a special certain type of chair made just for big business people that supposedly helped them, command attention and focus more. A lawnmower blade that would cut sideways. Don't know the purpose of it, but that was one of his inventions. Loretta had really never been happier. A journalist that learned about this story and wrote about this story knew them and said they were the perfect couple. And while Loretta and Terry, her daughter, didn't know much about Ta's past. They didn't seem to care because they were both just so like captivated. Terry was happy that her mom was happy. Loretta seemed happy. So they didn't care. Terry had said he told us his parents were dead. He was an only child and had been raised by his grandparents. So he had no family, apparently. So years went by. They were dating, living together, seemingly very happy. Ta couldn't seem to keep a job, though. He always seemed to be more interested in devoting his time and energy to new inventions, new ideas. He kept like, the next one's going to be it. The next one's going to be it. A few other people who knew him at the time described him as that he always thought he was the smartest man in the room and that he could talk snow off of a snowball. That's a quote from somebody. Terry had said he always had a neat idea. So we were always signing pieces of paper. He would say things like, I want to make sure you guys get a portion of this if something happens to me. So we were always signing documents. And after a while, we stopped reading them. It was always like, you're a part of this. You're going to be the owner. You're going to be the vice president of this next invention. And so we just signed things when he put them in front of us.
Because they were like handwritten little documents. He just got excitable.
Yep.
Or at least that's how I imagine it.
Yep.
And after a while, it's like, okay, you've had like a champagne cocktail. Fine.
And at this point, I mean, we're years now into this.
So they
Years
stayed
and
together
years.
a long time.
Long time. So we're years and years into this, and he's continually coming up with inventions, but unfortunately, none of them were really ever panned out. He would come up with a new one, say he needed money for this. I'm going to do this. I have to patent this. I'm going to go to this person. And Loretta would just keep giving him money.
Oh,
keep
okay,
giving
that's
him money.
important.
Yeah. Kept giving him more money, more money, more money. And after years and years of this, and no invention kind of ever came to fruition. It wasn't like, here's money, and then like, whoa, this one hit and made something. Like, they
not
kind
even
of just
like huge. It just
nothing.
None of them made money.
Nothing.
Period. Not
Right.
even became huge inventions or new products.
None of them did anything. And so at this point, we're like 10, 12 years into this. And many of Loretta's friends and family are at this point growing suspicious because even some of her neighbors and friends, he had kind of hit them up for like, oh, you should get in on this. This is going to be big.
Give me $400 and
Right.
you'll have a 4%
Yes,
whatever or
exactly.
something like that.
And nothing ever came of
Yeah.
it. So now people are kind of suspicious. But Loretta was completely blind to any red flags, any warning signs that Ta was anything other than this like perfect man that walked
Even
into her
after
life.
this handful of years.
Many, many years, she kept believing that he was still just, he was doing his best. And she didn't care. She had plenty of money. She liked having a companion.
Well, that's true. And I think it's interesting that this Ta had a lot of creative ideas.
He did.
That's cool.
That is
If it
cool.
doesn't go wherever I imagine it might go.
Well, we're gonna go somewhere. We're gonna flash forward to 2004. They've been living together now and a couple for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, long time.
So,
long time.
yeah, since 86 or
87.
87. Yeah.
So on December 14th, 2004, Ta was planning to drive down to Tucson to meet with, well, he told Loretta to meet with some potential investors for one of his most recent inventions. He was going to go to the U of A, and he had people to meet with about solar panels or something.
Oh.
So Loretta said, I'll come with you. I'll just come along for the ride, and I'll do some holiday shopping while you're at your meeting. So according to Ta, the two drove down, checked into the Residence Inn Hotel here in Tucson. And then Ta dropped Loretta at the Dillards at Park Place Mall and said, I'll be back in 2 hours. I'll meet you right back here. And she was going to do some holiday shopping.
Nice.
But when Ta returned to Dillard's to pick up Loretta, she was nowhere to be found. So he quickly called her daughter, Terry.
I think we got a call about 4:30. I got on the phone and Ta says, your mother's missing. She was shopping at Dillard's and I came back to get her and she's missing. I said, oh, Ta, just go back in, look around, check the front counter. I said, I can't do anything right now. I'm in a meeting, so call me later. Hung up the phone. I think about 40 minutes later, he calls again and he says, Your mother's still missing. Something's happened, I think.
You know what strikes me about that is after, okay, he said, I'll meet you back here approximately 2 hours.
Yeah.
So there's no like at this time at this place, but like Dillard's, I'll find you 2-ish hours. So he went back and he didn't find her right away or even within maybe, let's say 20, 30 minutes. But he immediately kind of not freaked out, but like.
He said she's missing. I mean, I feel like that's kind of a freak out. Like if I couldn't find you, I'd be like, Jenna wandered off.
Right.
Or like,
maybe she's in a different store in the mall.
Right.
Maybe she's in the bathroom. Maybe she's eating French fries at the food court. Maybe she saw.
So good.
Well, there wasn't a movie theater then, but yeah.
Right.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah.
After that second call where Taw was like, she's missing. It's been an hour. I can't find her. Terry got into her car. She had a Porsche and she drove to Tucson immediately. Apparently that, the drive from Phoenix or Tempe to Tucson is about 2 hours. It took her, she was worried. She sped down here an hour, 15 minutes.
Yep.
Not long after hanging up with Terry at 5:44 p.m., Taw called the police to report Loretta missing.
Tucson police.
My wife missing. We're at Dillard's at Park Mall. I was to pick her up at 4. I was here at 4, and she did not show up, which is not like her.
Shall any of us comment on his voice?
We could, for sure. He doesn't sound super concerned, that's for sure.
Well, also, it's just very like...
My wife is missing.
Right. Robotic.
Yep.
Which
Very
doesn't
robotic.
mean nothing to me. It just is robotic.
Odd.
Yeah.
So before long, the Park Place Mall was swarming with officers. And not long after that, Terry showed up, very, very distraught.
And this is only a handful of hours.
Oh, yeah. We're talking maybe 2 hours she's been missing.
That's
2.5
really
hours.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right away. Tons of police. Terry comes down. She's there. She's upset. She's talking to police. She explained to police that her and her mom, but more her mom, I guess her mom starred in the commercials more in Phoenix. So she said, like, she's a well-known businesswoman. She's a well-known to be wealthy and a millionaire.
Well, that's why I wondered if this happened so quick. Well, also that this happened so quickly.
That's a good point.
Because if you or I went missing after 2 hours, a lot of the things you've shared, like after 2 hours, I get you don't have to wait 24 or 48, but like 2 hours, they're going to say, hold your horses.
Well, 2 hours, I'd be like, Jenna, she went to have a cocktail and ran into a friend and went to hang out with them or something. You know what I mean? And her phone died. Like, I wouldn't go to that.
Because she was well-to-do, as you say.
That's true. Yeah. So Terry explained to police that she felt pretty strongly that her mom could be a target.
It's a strong possibility that a person like Loretta, very well dressed, looks affluent, elderly, and not paying attention to her surroundings, may have appeared as a target to steal her purse, rob her. When we spoke with Terry, she indicated to detectives that Loretta is a well-known person in the Phoenix area with her business and their commercials, and felt that her mother may have been kidnapped. Now this is a situation of a missing person to possibly an abduction.
Well, yeah, because steal her purse and run off.
Right. That has nothing to do with her being missing. So now police are now deeming this a missing person for sure, possibly an abduction. So their first step was to pull surveillance footage from the mall. And when they did that, it was confusing because there was no sign of Loretta on any footage at all from Dillard's or any surrounding areas in the mall for the entire day. Nothing. The only thing they found on the footage was Taw going inside Dillard's to the security desk, speaking to somebody quickly at the security desk, and leaving. That's it. So when they initially spoke to Taw, he told them his side of the story. He said, we drove down this morning from Tempe. We stopped twice on the way. We stopped once for sandwiches and once for baseball caps. And then we arrived and checked into our hotel at the Residence Inn in Tucson around 12:30 p.m. I dropped Loretta at the mall around 2, and I was supposed to meet her there at 4. I was supposed to meet her there at 4. But there was no sign of her, and that's when I called her daughter, and that's when I called you. That's basically what he said.
Did they go to the Residence Inn with the check-in person?
So there was no sign of Loretta on the surveillance footage, and to the police, they were like, well, something's not adding up here. So their next step was to search Taw's car, because it was there at the mall. They thought, let's look, let's see if there's any clues that could help us find her. And they didn't find any clues that necessarily pointed to an abduction, but they did find a pickaxe and a shovel that had both been recently used. They had fresh dirt on them. So between the pickaxe and the shovel and the surveillance footage with no Loretta, the police are concerned at this point, but they don't really know what to make of it. So they decided to dig a bit deeper into Taw's timeline, and they go speak with the hotel manager at the Residence Inn. Mm-hmm. Your brain's in the right spot. And they also decided to pull Taw's phone records to just triple check, see if his timeline added
Cell
up.
phone records?
Cell phone records, yeah.
Earlier days of cell phones.
Yes, this was 2004, so newish days of cell phones. So they went to the Residence Inn, they pulled his cell phone records, they wanted to see if the timeline added up, if it was as he said. And it was not. The hotel manager said that Taw checked in at 2:58 p.m., not 12:30.
Oh.
And cell phone records showed that Taw spent around 2 hours and 15 minutes just traveling between exits 198 and 200 off of I-10. 2 hours between these two exits.
What's 198 and 200?
Middle of the desert.
Is it really?
Yeah. He had made a few phone calls off of exit 199 at 12:30, and then for 2 hours he was between those exits.
Going back and forth, or
Wait,
not
the cell phone,
leaving the area.
Well, they could, at that point, the cell phone only is saying he's in this area for 2 hours and 15 minutes. It didn't show, it wasn't like tracking his phone like he's driving here and
Sure,
here.
but it shows timestamps.
Right. Yeah. So he was in this kind of remote desert area for 2 hours. And he told them he was at the Residence Inn at 12:30. Sure. And that's clearly untrue. They also pulled his credit card statements, which showed that he had purchased 2 baseball caps at the Casa Grande Outlet Mall, located at exit 198, and later purchased 2 lunches at Love's Truck Stop, located at exit 200. But that was around 1:15 p.m., which is long after he said he had already checked into Tucson. So he's buying sandwiches and, he's still basically in Casa Grande. He's not even to Tucson yet when he said he had already checked into his hotel.
He's not even near the ostrich farm.
Right.
Those have since closed down, but...
Oh, really?
Those ones where there was a Wendy's there and those out of nowhere, the little outlet mall. But also 198 and 199, I think we should show this picture if it was clearer, because 199 is the exit to I-8 to San Diego. I'm not saying that has anything to do with.
Oh, interesting.
This is it's the middle of the desert. But it's not here. When people drive here to Phoenix or here to Flag, like, this is a very obvious space.
Right. We need to post pictures of I-10 because somebody who hasn't driven from Phoenix to Tucson doesn't understand that, like, you go through areas where there is residential homes on the side of the highway and there are strip malls and stuff. But then you go through stretches where there is nothing. It is miles and miles as far as you can see of empty desert.
And this is, like, it's the middle of empty desert. And also it's a very popular space on I-10 because plenty of people are headed over to San Diego.
Right. So police... They talked to the hotel manager, pull his cell phone records, pull his credit card statement. None of it. His timeline doesn't add up, clearly. So they are now officially suspicious. And they ask him to come in. We're still in Tucson now. They ask him to come in to the police station the next day for questioning.
Has the finances been a problem between you and Loretta?
They're not a point of contention that is creating a rift or conflict.
In the back of the van is a shovel and a pick.
Yes.
What's the purpose of that?
I dig geodes. Sometimes I use the pick to break geodes, and I always carry a shovel in the car.
I tell him his timeline doesn't add up to what we're receiving, both from the cell phone company and also from his arrival at the hotel.
I was not prepared to have to account minute for minute for my time. I'm wondering if my watch was off.
It's not off a couple hours. Also, I understand, like, people sometimes just give generalizations. Like, it was around noon to 1.
Totally. That makes sense. But that far off? Like, he was pretty specific about checking in at 12:30, dropping her off at the mall at 2, picking her up at 4. And, like, the timeline's way, way off.
Well, and still, the one thing that sticks out to me is why did the cameras or whatever catch
only him
at Park Mall, Dillard's, or talking to the security,
and not her.
Right.
So police are suspicious. Terry is desperate for answers, the daughter, but she doesn't want to believe that it's Ta. I mean, she hasn't lived with him, but he's been part of her life for 18 years.
Almost 2 decades.
Yeah. So she really doesn't want to believe that he could have anything to do with this. And he wants her to believe that too. So he actually called her right around this time and asked her to come to his hotel room and talk. And Terry went there thinking she's going to get some like real answers, some insight as to what may have happened. And she didn't. She went there. She asked him, please tell me what happened. Please tell me any details. And he said, I can't tell you anything because I don't know. I have no idea what happened. And she left there feeling, she didn't know anything more than when she arrived, but something in her was giving her some doubts. She was starting to doubt him even though she didn't want to. And she wasn't the only one. The detectives were well into doubting him and had obtained a search warrant for his hotel room. And they asked Terry to join them at the hotel room to go through everything that he had at the hotel.
There was a lot of stuff all over the bed that he had taken down, guns and ammunition taken from my mother's house. There was a lot of valuables there. But I think probably the most crucial moment was when I saw the jewelry. That probably was the first moment where I thought this wasn't just kidnapping, this was something else.
Okay, so there was all her mother's jewelry, ammunition. Mm-hmm. So those don't necessarily go together. Like maybe her mother brought her jewelry.
I'll have to post pictures because there was like 13 watches, like in a watch case.
Are they male or female watches?
Looks like both. Mostly female though.
Huh.
So it was like most of his like.
So she's coming for a weekend or a night or two. She's not bringing 13 watches or even 7.
No, she's not. So, yeah, it's weird. Like, but again, the pickaxe and the shovel, okay, maybe he did dig for geodes.
Sure, we're in the desert. Like, if it was just that, if I just pulled some random person over and they had a pickaxe, I wouldn't be like, oh, they murdered.
You're murdered. No, of course not. But that's weird. The surveillance stuff is weird. Now the hotel room.
Well, the guns?
Guns.
If it was just one gun, it is Arizona.
Right. He had, again, I'll have to post the picture. He had boxes of, I want to say 100 bullets. Like lots of ammunition.
Well, okay, my thought goes to, if this isn't a true crime podcast, he's coming down near the border to sell shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually a interesting idea. That could definitely be it. Again, he could be coming down here to just shoot guns, and maybe they were going to sell some jewelry. So again, police, it's all weird, but none of it is, it's not like they found like blood in his car or anything like that, but it is concerning. So they also obtained a search warrant for her home in Tempe and had the Tempe police go to her home and search. And what they found was now pretty troubling. They found boxes and boxes in the garage piled up that were stuffed with overdue utility bills, mortgage bills, late notices, foreclosure warnings, and they were all addressed to Loretta. But Terry was certain that her mom had never seen any of this. Like her mom would never let bills go unpaid or her mortgage go unpaid or anything like that.
So her spouse was maybe supposedly she handed off that responsibility to Ta.
Perhaps. And the most concerning thing they found was supposedly there was a van parked at the house, and in the van they found a purse with a checkbook and ID It was Loretta's purse, Loretta's ID, Loretta's checkbook. So how was she shopping here in Tucson at the mall when her purse, her credit cards, everything else was in a van at her house in Tempe?
Oh.
Yeah. So at this point, things are not looking great for Taw.
Or Loretta.
Or Loretta. That's true.
Jeez.
So police brought him back in for questioning and asked him to kind of re-go over the timeline. And the conversation didn't go really well.
Based on evidence that we had, we were confident that Loretta had never made it to Tucson.
You need to respect the fact that I'm trying to give you information in as clear a form as I can.
All right, plain and simple is she never made it down here. This whole thing is gonna come down like a deck of cards.
That was the detective and Taw. Taw saying, like, I'm doing the best I can. The detective saying,
it's coming down like a deck of cards, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So
your story's not checking out.
Right. And as police continued to dig, they discovered that Todd left some pertinent details out of his story. He had withdrawn $24,000 from the joint checking account that he shared with Loretta around 9:20 that day she went missing in Tempe. And then CCTV showed that he had then left town and headed east on I-10 in his red Chrysler minivan, which did check out with his story, but the $24,000, that's kind of a big thing to leave out.
Well, also the fact that no one saw Loretta on any of these videos.
Taw's now the primary suspect in Loretta's case. But unfortunately, without a body, they were unable to charge him with anything. Yet. You don't want to miss what happens next in today's murder story, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors. So they had to let him go, but they did put him under surveillance. And this quote from Terry is weird to me. Terry, obviously, she didn't know what to think. She was worried about her mom. She didn't want to believe that Taw had anything to do with this. She's confused. And she said that. She said it was very confusing. I liked him. He and I were both Virgos. He was always eager to help, and my mother really loved him. But I wondered, did he ever really love her? Did he ever love me? I know in the beginning I tried to look him up online, but we just never found anything. I guess I just didn't see the signs as well as I should have. And I think my mother stayed as long as she did because she was the old-fashioned, stand-by-your-man type of person. I just don't want to go there. The man that I knew as my stepfather, I don't want to believe he could commit something like this or do something horrible.
You know what stands out to me, and you'll probably have to cut this because no one fucking cares, is she said in the early days or years, I looked him up online. This happened in 2004. They were together almost 2 decades. In the early years, there wasn't the internet.
Right.
And this was 2004. They were together since 87.
Right. So if she
early years would, I guess 94 could still be early years, but there was no internet or barely internet.
Exactly.
Huh.
Well, police were definitely closing in on Taw, and Taw knew it. And so did Terry. But she wanted answers directly from him before he was arrested. So on December 23rd, she tried calling him. She tried calling him several times the week of December 23rd. And on December 23rd, she continued calling him, but he never answered. And at this point, she's worried that he's going to flee. She's thinking he did it and he's going to get away. So she called the police and said, like, I've tried to get in touch with him. He's not answering. Can you please go check on him? They, I believe, had him under like light surveillance, but not watching him at all times.
At his home back in Tempe.
Yeah, he was back in Tempe. When he initially went back to Tempe, there was such a media frenzy outside of their home, apparently, that he stayed at a hotel up there for a while. But at this point, 2 weeks post her disappearance, he's now back at their home. So officers went to the home, and when they arrived, it became clear why he wasn't answering Terry's calls. He had hung himself in the garage with an electrical cord and killed himself. And
that says something.
It sure does. Within a week of his death, the hotel where he had been staying up in Phoenix or Tempe called Terry and said he checked out, but he left a briefcase behind. Could you come get it? So she went to pick it up.
Once she knew he had hung himself.
Yeah. And when she opened, she couldn't get it open. She actually used, I saw a clip where she used a screwdriver. She was like, I have to get this open. She got it open. She found a note, a handwritten note from him that read, all it said was, Loretta and I promised to be together for eternity, and so we shall. So she couldn't tell if this was a suicide note. Kind of came off that way.
Well, I mean, it was clearly a suicide.
It was a suicide, right? Was this note intended as like...
I think it's trying to throw people off, as in, I didn't fucking kill her. She's dead. I have to kill myself because I love her so much, which I don't believe in.
That's so true.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I can't go on without her.
Right, which...
But if you're going to kill yourself, like, who cares at that point? It's almost like kind of a fucked up, selfish thing to do if you did kill her.
I don't believe... Well, right. I believe he killed her thus far. I don't know what else. I believe he killed her. I believe he killed himself because he knew he was going to be caught, thrown in prison forever.
Right.
So he killed himself, firstly, writing that note. So people... It was his last-ditch effort to say, I'm innocent, but I can't live my life without her.
Right.
So I think that's fucking bullshit.
Right.
And it was all a fake.
Yep. No, I totally agree. I agree with you. And it really hit Terry in that moment that the only person who could really help her, because she at this point is still believing that Todd did it. And so the only person who could help her find her mom's body is gone now. Answer any questions, like help her get answers and closure. He's now dead.
Wait, you said the only person who could now help her,
who could have helped her
find her mom's body.
Yeah, is now
so
dead.
She believed Todd did it.
Yeah, at this point she was thinking that he did it, and now he's dead. And so now it like really hit her like, shit, I may never know what happened to my mom.
That's true.
Also in this briefcase, which there was he had left the briefcase in the room, and it actually said, he left a note on top of it that said, to give to Terry. And then it was his laptop computer, some of his jewelry, $200, and a power of attorney that was signed to Terry for him.
Not needed, because he's dead.
Right. So on one hand, his death, it damaged the investigation. The fact that he couldn't provide answers to questions that Terry and the police and everyone still had about Loretta. But his death also proved helpful in some ways because it allowed police to dig deeper into his life and his finances much more quickly than if he had been alive. He's dead. They can get into his, the details of his life. So Tempe Sergeant Dan Masters said, prior to his death, we didn't necessarily have access to all of the financial records, but now we're able to get court orders and get in there much more quickly. And they did. And they found hard evidence that Taw had been embezzling thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars from Loretta for years. He had opened up multiple credit cards in her name. He had essentially stolen her identity and just been spending her money without her knowing. He'd also been taking the mortgage payments for months and months. I don't know if she was giving him a blank check or gave him access to her checkbook or what, and he was in charge of paying the mortgage, but he didn't. He took the money, so she thought the mortgage was being paid, but it wasn't. He was keeping the money.
It also sounds like, to some extent, and I'm not saying fully, but she might have not known for a handful of months whether or not it was being paid, because it sounds like, from what you've described, he was in charge of the finances. So unless someone was coming and saying, which I wonder about that, it doesn't matter, like where was the home mortgage company saying you haven't paid us? But still, maybe she wasn't checking their accounts on the regular.
Exactly.
Still, thus far, doesn't give evidence that he killed her.
It does not. The only evidence they have at this point is that he had been stealing the mortgage payments for months, and that the house was actually going to be foreclosed on and scheduled to be auctioned on February 7th. So this is all happening December. It also turned out that Taw wasn't Scottish, didn't live in Scotland, and hadn't just moved here from Scotland.
Well, thank you. He did not have a Scottish accent.
He did not.
Okay, I totally forgot about that part. He did not have a Scottish accent.
He did not. The police found out that he had actually just been released from prison right before he met Loretta. And Loretta was not the first woman that he had done this to, embezzled money from for years. I remember how I said that he told them he had no family, everyone was dead. Turned out that wasn't true either. When police searched for relatives after his death, they discovered a brother in Colorado who he hadn't spoken to in a decade, an aunt in southern Arizona who hadn't spoken to him in 40 years, and a father in Oregon. So everything was a lie.
Was that his real name, Taw?
Benderly, I believe so.
Huh.
Yeah. Terry was obviously devastated to find out that this man that her and her mom had loved for 18 years had been a fraud. Everything had been a lie. And she now felt pretty certain that she no longer needed to be searching Tucson, hoping to find her mom alive. And she rather needed to start searching for a body.
So I got out a map and I started putting everything logical. Like if I had just killed somebody and you're leaving, you'd want to get rid of the body fast. So I started circling all the places that were close to the freeway. The really amazing thing, because of the media, I had people coming in every week to help search in the desert. The first time I was out there were 60 people, and the troopers came out and showed us how to search the desert and how to do a line and walk across and what to look for. I had somebody else offer to take me up in a helicopter, which was a lot easier to search. So we just began a long process, and weekend after weekend, I searched months and months and months and still hadn't found her.
So Terry searched for an entire year for her mom, kept searching and searching. Lots of help from the media. This was a very, very media-heavy case. And despite all of her efforts, no clues, no remains were found. But she still wasn't giving up. And throughout all of this, lots of psychics had reached out to her, which I guess is kind of common in very public murder cases. I wasn't aware of that. But psychic mediums reach out and say, like, I can help you. And one in particular was known for being very legitimate, for being quite helpful to police, working on many cases. She was a psychic detective named Mary Ann Morgan.
My name is Mary Ann Morgan, and I am a psychic detective for law enforcement. I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, I'm clairescent. I first had knowledge of the gift at about 5 years old, and since then it's grown exponentially in different ways. I heard things when I was a child, that's the clairaudient, and then I started seeing things, which is the clairvoyant and clairescent, and then, you know, in the last 10 years, it's gone to remote viewing and jumping time with my mind. So it's been a lifetime of development. It's a good gift.
Jumping time with my mind?
I am just interested that Tempe Police Department or any police department, and I'm not saying I don't support intuitive people, but that's interesting that was that her actual label, like a psychic detective?
It was. And I also saw interviews with Detective Pachenko, who was like a big detective on this case. And he said when he first heard about like her and what she had seen and that Terry had talked to her, he was like, there is actually a clip of him being like,
that's good and fine.
That's fine, but we like to deal more in like modern day clues and forensics.
So I support both, but so that's interesting.
The way that she talks about it, it sounds like she really like works closely with them. I've seen a bunch of interviews with her regarding this case, and she really does talk like, I've worked with the Tempe police on so many cases and blah, blah, blah. But then when I see the interview with the detective, he's kind of like, we were like pretty hesitant to like go with this.
We allow her input.
We like, okay, fine, we'll take the input. So Mary Ann told Terry a lot of things. She said she saw Loretta on the last day that she was alive. She said she had visions that Loretta answered the door, got bad news, and then confronted a man. And they argued, and then the man came up behind Loretta when she was sitting in a chair and put a bag over her face and killed her. Mary Ann told Terry that her mom's body was about 150 feet from something blue. and that she kept hearing children laughing in the distance. Marianne also believed that Taw was the killer and had placed a plastic bag over Loretta's head, and she had died from asphyxiation, like suffocated from the bag. In 2006, a family searching for fossils near an abandoned motel in Arizona stumbled upon a body in a shallow grave. It was buried 18 inches under the sand and rocks in the desert near the intersection of Interstate 8 and Highway 84. Yep, exactly where you said.
Well, I didn't say that. Interstate 8 is the offshoot to San Diego.
Right.
But 84, so it's on 8 a little bit, I think. 8 and 84. Okay.
Near there is what it says. The body was wrapped in a black tarp, and there was a plastic bag over the head, which was exposed. Strangely, the abandoned motel near where Loretta's body was found, was painted bright blue and situated next to a children's playground, also painted blue. And it was determined that the cause of death was asphyxiation. They actually found pieces of the plastic bag down her throat. She had choked on the plastic bag trying to breathe and stay alive. Ugh. And so based on this and the phone records and the credit card records and everything, police thought that they were able to piece together those last few hours of her life. And this is what they believed happened. They think that on December 13th, because there was a phone record showing that Loretta made a call to Wells Fargo, they think that Loretta found out that her house was about to be foreclosed on, hadn't been paid, and the mortgage hadn't been paid, and that she confronted Taw, who likely became violent and killed her there on the spot.
Because she was about to find shit out.
Yep. And then he crafted the entire story about going to Tucson, and he did drive her body there and buried her where they found her, near something blue where children would be playing, which blows my mind, because I don't know how I feel about the psychic and mediums and stuff like that, but that is fascinating. Everything she said was 100% right. Loretta's remains were cremated and spread on one of her favorite beaches in Hawaii by her daughter and her son, Scott. And Terry, sadly, when she went to clean out Loretta's house, she found and read several of her mom's personal journals. And what she read really, really broke her heart. It's so sad. It turned out that Loretta and Taw were not the perfect couple, as everyone kind of thought, or as they kind of showed the world. Their relationship was riddled with lies and abuse. Loretta's journal pages were filled with intimate details of despair and anger, accounts of conflict and cheating and stealing and unhappiness. Terry felt I think, guilty that she didn't recognize that or see that, and she claimed that this was a classic case of elder abuse, a case of a lonely older woman who believed that she was better off with a terrible man than with no man at all, who, she chose kind of to take a blind eye. Even though she was unhappy, she wanted to have him in her life.
I mean, that could be said for anyone of any age. I don't know. That to me doesn't, I thought elder abuse has to be by someone who is not elder as well. And he was older.
I think he was younger than Loretta, but not by much.
Right.
Yeah.
So same age-ish range.
Yeah, I think of elder abuse as like at a
To me, it's codependency or not wanting to be alone.
Yep.
None of which is good or bad or anything. It just is.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. And also, I think Terry, sounds like, how could have she known?
She couldn't. They put out this perfect picture. But today, Terry hopes her mother's story will serve as a warning for other women who may find themselves in similar situations. She created a new business to raise money to help other women escape from clutches of bad relationships. She said, quote, "It can start small and subtle. You have to investigate. You have to do your due diligence. You have to trust your intuition. You can't ignore the warning signs. I kept believing my mother because I never thought she would be misled. And maybe there was shame there. He wasn't going to let her go."
I also think, this has nothing to do with Loretta and causing her own murder at all. But like Loretta wasn't someone who was depending on Ta for livelihood or anything.
Mm-mm. Ta was depending on her.
Right, so she could have left.
Of course she could have.
Again, I'm not saying this has anything to do with her fault, but
No,
it's
of
not
course.
like, yeah, we can raise awareness all we want. Sorry,
Right, but if
you
you're not
probably
willing-
should cut this, but like really and truly,
if you're not willing to, if you're not willing to be honest with the people around you, or tell somebody that like you're in a terrible situation,
or
this
honest
is bad,
with yourself,
or honest with yourself, then like there's nothing anybody
or
can do.
she thought it was the best she could do, and this, or
absolutely,
it was normalized to her. Maybe she had awful relationships growing up, or her family members had bad relationships, so she only knew certain relationships.
Honestly, it really makes me sad, because the way that I picture it, which again, I don't know that any of these people, I could be way off. I picture it like Loretta was accomplished, happy, wealthy, but lonely. And this man who she grew to love came into her life, and she didn't want to be alone. So she was willing to endure the sadness, the frustration, the lying, the whatever was happening, because she felt it was better than being alone. And that is so sad. Loneliness is terrible, and that's a sad thing.
You know what's more terrible?
Death.
When you don't want to die.
That's true. Yeah.
But no one knows. We don't know what we don't until we know.
That's right. So that is our story. It was never officially proven that Ta killed her, but no, come on. And this story was actually, before we sign off for the day, I want to just make sure to give credit to Jane Butkus, who actually left us I loved this. She left us a voicemail on our voicemail line, which no one has really done. And it's really nice to get. I loved hearing her voice and hearing her just tell us about this story that she heard about. And I looked into it, and it ended up being so fascinating. And I think this was a really great story. So thank you so much, Jane. We really appreciated this. And I would love to get more story suggestions from people.
Well, I would also like to get more voicemails.
Voicemails.
Because I don't know. To me, it's all real. So I don't mean that, but it resonates.
Yeah.
You can hear the voice. You can hear. She was like shuffling around her house. I pictured her like that, trying to figure out what she wanted to share, and it was really nice.
Yeah, it was. I liked it a lot. So we would love to get more voice messages, whether it's a story suggestion or just feedback or a question. And we're happy to play those voicemails on the show if you want, or just to share about them. But it's nice to hear voices from our listeners, because you guys are always hearing our voices. So if you should want to leave us a comment, question, case suggestion, you can leave a voicemail at 520-302-5253. It will just go right to voicemail. Nobody's going to pick up. Don't worry. So you can just leave us a voicemail.
Or worry, someday I might pick up.
You can.
Well, I could. I'll get access to that Google Voice number.
So that's it. Thank you guys for listening. And we will look forward to sharing all of our usual banter on the bonus episode. And that's it.
Good night and good luck.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.